Just what were your overall feelings on the trade? Let's start there, and then we'll get more specific.
Let's start with this as an immediate loss for the Red Sox, right? That's the first thing that you think of is you had a guy that was consistently – I think I saw a stat this morning that Barry Bonds was the last 30-homer player for the San Francisco Giants in 2004, something like that. So you're getting a guy that you can put in the middle of your lineup and can hit, right? That's the one thing we're going to see with Rafael Devers. He continues to hit. That was my immediate reaction. It was botched by the front office, the whole communication part. When they acquired Bregman or what have you, he should have been prepared. It should have been done in the offseason. With that, I'll say that Devers came into camp out of shape and maybe out of shape to begin the season, which we saw in Texas. So I think all parties involved here kind of screwed things up. And then it just continued maybe to get worse because of the fact that Costas got hurt. That, you know, they went to him and said, can you play first base? And he said no, because they had told him that he was going to DH. So fine. The only part I got ticked at Raffy for was when Bregman went down with that injury because of the circumstances and the depleted roster with Costas in one corner and Bregman in the other, is if I'm Rafael Devers, and maybe this is old school of me, I would have gone to Cora and Breslow and said, listen, here's my glove. I can play third base. I've done it my whole career. I'm a 3-time All-Star. I can hit. I'll play third if you guys need me to play third. I think he should have done that. Now, the second part of this whole thing is here's my take out of everything is that, like it or not, ready or not, Roman Anthony is now the face of this franchise. And he's the face of this franchise going forward. And this young core is now here for the next whatever years to try to win a World Series championship, maybe taking a step back this year. But going forward, there's no doubt about it. Everybody outside of New England you talk to and you hear about this kid, they all say he's a can't-miss superstar prospect who's going to be a franchise player.
Fine, you had him anyway, though. So this trade does nothing in terms of Anthony's development.
Well, it keeps him up here, Fred. I think the problem you're going to have, and you guys mentioned Abreu coming back too, is you just had too many players that you were trying to squeeze in and play without having any flexibility in the DH spot because Rafi wasn't moving from that spot. And great, he's great. Hold on. He's a great hitter. But at the same time, what it enables you now to do is to rotate guys in and around the outfield to be able to get them in the lineup. They're
still not playing every
day.
Well, no, but he's not going to play every day.
Yes, Anthony could play right field one day, DH the next day. He could play center field the next day, DH the next day.
What are you going to do with Yoshida?
Well, Yoshida's, Cora said yesterday, he's at least a month away from doing anything. Yeah. So he's not ready.
Okay, so when Bregman comes back, what are you going to do?
Then you have Meyer now as the odd man out. So what do you do then?
Well, I think you mix and match, and you continue to mix and match. And the other thing too is I wouldn't be surprised at some point if, let's see how it goes, but I think if Meyer one day becomes your everyday shortstop, I just think that.
Then what are you going to do with Story?
Well, that's what you're going to have to DH him a little bit. You're going to have to maybe move him. The other thing too, Cora hinted at this past week was he also said he has enough athleticism and baseball wherewithal is that you could put Meyer at first base too, and he thinks he would be able to handle that as well.
All right. Here's the thing, Dan. You still have all of these lineup problems. All of these lineup problems that were there before are still there now. And you were saying about how Roman Anthony's the franchise cornerstone. Maybe in the future that's true. But Red Sox management has asked Sox fans to be very, very patient. They didn't do anything with the Major League roster for about 3 years until they finally spent some money this year on Crochet, on Bregman, on Devers a couple of years ago. And now you're asking them to wait another year, 2, 3 until these kids mature? All the time while spending how much money on tickets and how much money on concessions and how much money on parking?
I get that, John, but I think if you look at the Red Sox right now, you see that. How can you not see that these kids are the face of the franchise going forward? Roman Anthony is the guy.
Okay, but I don't understand what this has to do with Devers.
Because I think
traded.
with Devers, Fred, is inflexibility, right? So here, you go back and we'll talk about it again. They asked him to move.
Let me ask you this, though.
Wait, Fred.
No. You're just explaining what I already know.
Fred,
so
you had the owner fly a month ago.
Understand, Dan. We all know.
City to ask him to move, and he refused. Okay. What does that say to the rest?
Fine.
Now, the impact that can have on Anthony, Meyer, and the rest of the kids is they're looking at the superstar of this franchise, basically telling the owner to no. So, what does that say about the team? And what you're trying to do in the club. And I'm not in the clubhouse.
Okay.
We're not in the clubhouse.
Why
so I don't know what
did you trade him for nothing?
Like in that clubhouse.
Why? Okay, Dan. Again, these are all things we know. Why do you trade him for nothing?
Like, they didn't trade him for nothing. They traded him for the fact that San Francisco took the entire contract. That was the biggest thing first and foremost.
So saving money was the best thing you got out of it.
No. Saving money to be able to use that money. Now, I will hold them to a fire if they don't go out and use that money, because they still need some veterans to help this team and get this team going. They still need starting pitching, because Walker Buehler hasn't been the answer behind Crochet.
But, okay, so
if they don't spend the money, Ryan, then you can come at me and say they did it just to save money.
So,
no, this was, to me, made because of the fact that they needed to get a team mentality going back in the right direction with these young, impressionable kids that are watching them every single day.
But Dan, okay, so they still have, they have flexibility to do whatever they want with the roster. Why didn't they shop him? If Buster Olney's report last night is accurate, they weren't shopping him. They just made a deal with the Giants, and that this trade came as a shock to general managers around the league. So if that's the case, and you need to add to your roster, why didn't they add to the roster in this trade?
You would have gotten a hell of a lot more if you had started playing teams off each other.
But again, I go back to
this.
Would you have gotten other teams to take the entire contract? That's the other issue.
I would rather, if you're going to trade Devers,
I'd rather get something back for him.
Seriously, I'd rather pay 25% of that and get better prospects, and I don't know, a guy who I could insert in my lineup today, as opposed to letting someone else take all of the contract and getting nothing.
The Giants were willing to take it on. I'm guessing there's at least one other team who would have been willing to take on that contract for a guy of his ilk. Yeah, okay, so someday he's going to be over 30, and, maybe the contract won't be as good in the last 2 or 3 years. This is the kind of deal. I mean, the Red Sox made that deal knowing that he was going to be over 30 someday. So why is it so onerous of a contract?
I'm not saying that they're not going to miss him. I agree with the trade. I'm just saying that this is what I think that they are thinking, and that they need their kids to play, and they want these kids to play. So they didn't bring other guys back here because they had a roster logjam to begin with. They didn't want to trade Abreu. They didn't want to trade Duran. And I think that going forward, they can build with this team.
Why wouldn't you trade? Why wouldn't you trade Abreu and Duran? Yeah, why would you trade your best player?
It's like we have a log jam, so get rid of the best, most expensive guy.
Hardy texted everyone out of the way. Everyone out of the way. Hardy texted me, and he's talking to an inside source with I'm not making this up. He's talking to This is going to make you feel a lot better. Hardy is texting with. He was nice enough to send this to me. He is texting with someone with the organization. I'm not being sarcastic. Okay. All of this is true.
All right.
And this, I don't know who it is. I don't know who it is.
Okay.
It doesn't say. I wouldn't say anyway, but it says Hardy does not trust me with who it is. It's just an inside source. But there you go. It really comes down to his contract came with responsibilities to the fans and the team that Devers was not living up to, and ownership had enough of him. I'm not just talking about playing a different position. I'm talking about being available to fans and media. There's certainly responsibility this ownership requires, and he never showed up. It's ultimately the clubhouse was suffering because of him brooding. So maybe it's not news you don't know. So there you go. That's very informative of why they gave him up for nothing.
And which goes along the lines of you don't want these young players around that.
Right. But the San Francisco Giants are fine with that. And the San Francisco Giants now have an ability to win a World Series.
I think it's a different situation, Fred. I think the Red Sox also created that. The part of the problem with Devers, right? The Giants aren't going to do that. The Giants are going to come in here and say, you've got a clean slate. Here's what we want to do. What do you think? Here, blah, 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 blah. The Red Sox have been battling this since they acquired Bregman, right? So that doesn't make it easier here.
You have to admit, I understand.
Which I said, they're as much at fault for this too as Devers.
Right, because but this might be a last straw situation with people. Like
I think so.
Yeah. Because, I mean, everything you've said, none of it excuses the return.
Like Betts, Bogarts, now Devers, and you really have nothing to show for.
And Betts and Bogarts was actually a good deal, it turns out, not giving him that money. Betts was a terrible deal, but at least his contract was ending. This is just, everything you're saying is, well, they got a lot of money. They got money back. And that to me
got under the competitive balance tax.
And that to me
is not the bottom line.
But Dan, stop for a second. When we said why did they get nothing back for him? You said, well, then maybe someone else wouldn't have taken the entire contract. And if I'm a fan, I'm saying, well, I would want something back and I would give them money in order to get something back. And you said, well, you don't want players back because they'll take up positions. Well, then give me pitching. Give me a guy who can be a starting pitcher for this team this year with term. Like, you're giving up a possible Hall of Fame player at 28 years old.
The other thing, Dan, is whatever bat they wind up spending money on to get back isn't going to be probably as good as the bat you just lost. There are organizations that wait decades to find a bat like Devers, and you just gave him up for nothing.
Correct. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say you're wrong, John, but I'm trying to tell you how I perceive what's going on in the fact that it was a problem, and it had been a problem for a while now, and they didn't want the young kids to be exposed to that. And the other part of that is we finally, people have been begging for them to call up Roman Anthony. You got your wish. Now he's got to play. They can't just call him up and not play him. Yeah, and now they've got that flexibility to play all these guys.
But you didn't have to trade your best player for nothing.
Okay, but it was the circumstances, I think, which made it possible to do that because of what was going on. And again, so think about behind the scenes. And I'm not in that clubhouse every day. If there's an impact that Devers is having an impact on these young, impressionable 21, 22-year-olds, first time in the bigs, Anthony's locker is now next to Bregman. I mean, you're trying to make an impression and show these guys the way, which we've seen in the past with Red Sox players taken under the wings of young players taken under the wings of the veterans, that if he's not cooperating and it's not working, he just wants to hit and that's it, and doesn't want to do anything else as the face of the franchise, well, then our new face of the franchise is here, and we got to play him, and we got to get going on this. Why not now?
That sounds to me like, hey, here's why we gave up our best player for nothing. He was sulking. And that is ludicrous. Roman Anthony's development over the next 30 days is not going to be
make or break his career.
Seized up because Devers is your DH and isn't happy. That's a ludicrous point. What, not shopping Devers is ridiculous. Like, none of this makes everyone understands that Devers and the Red Sox were going to break up. Fine. Trading him isn't the thing that's insane. What's insane is trading him now for nothing, not shopping him. All of that is nuts.
Let me ask you this, Fred. Okay, let's say you're having issues with management and ownership.
I can't imagine that.
You're a franchise player, right?
Yes.
So let's say the owner of your company, Beasley or whatever, flies in for the day because management on the local level can't get through to you and can't convince you to do something or what have you, or sign a deal or whatever it is. And he sits down with you, sits in an office and says, Fred, you're our most valuable asset on this franchise. We need you to step up and be the face of the franchise. We need you to be out in front of everything with the media. We need you to, maybe put your glove on and play first or third, whatever's the best. We're still paying you $300+ million. And they basically, he says no. And then you leave. And you fly back home. How does that make you feel as the owner?
Okay,
right.
Can
and
you,
then if you're
Dan,
I
understand the analogy.
What do you do?
I will tell you this: that if they did fire me, and they brought in a piece of garbage to be my replacement, then it's going to hurt them more than it hurts me. I go out and then I go to San Francisco and do mornings and make a lot of money and make that station a lot of money. And this station fails in the mornings because they don't have anyone to replace me. That's what happens.
But I think they feel like they have people to replace Devers. Not right now, Fred.
Okay.
So you guys can rip me all you want about saying that, but I'm just saying
they didn't have to trade him.
The future of the franchise is here now, and all these kids are going to play, and they're going to try.
They're not going to play a lot more than they are already.
They're going to keep platooning him, Dan. That's the problem.
Well, I think eventually you'll see Anthony play against left-handers.
Well, eventually is the trade deadline. I mean, they got nothing back for Devers. You know they didn't get anything back.
It's malpractice.
It was a terrible trade.
Horrible trade.
You know that. It was a bad
fine,
trade.
Guys. Fine. Have a great day.
APD, Danny. APD.
All right. Danny, you didn't like this trade when you first heard it. I know you didn't. And I know people in the Red Sox
it stunned me, but I understand it. I understand it to some degree, and I do. And I look forward now. Fred, I can't tell you, the amount of people who just go on and on and on about Roman Anthony.
I'm sure he's very good, but he was on your team anyway. You have control over him with Devers on the team or not.
But now you have a path for him to play every day. You have a path for all these kids to play every day.
I still, you haven't explained it really, but
once you have a Bray and Bregman back, it's just as complicated.
Yeah,
as
I don't
before.
understand how there's a path now. They didn't get rid of an outfielder. I don't understand how there's a path, but nonetheless,
they have flexibility in the DH spot. Okay, fine.
All right. Do you want to DH Roman Anthony? All right.
No, again. You mix and match. You're not listening to me. You mix and match guys and make it different ways. And that's how you use your roster. It gives you roster flexibility.
I'm usually on your side.
Is it right? I don't know, Fred. The Mookie Betts trade was wrong. We know that, right? He's a franchise superstar.
Made
is
more
this
sense
one
than
right?
this.
I think now they feel like it's for the better of the team.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what are your expectations of the team now, though, in terms of
they're going to finish in last again.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, see, now we have common ground.
Listen.
No, you never know.
You never know. That's
true.
what's crazy about this crazy game.
That's right.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank
show
you, John.
up every day.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, Danny. Thank you.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Red Sox analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.